The United States is South Africa's second biggest trading partner after China. Since 2000, auto sales to the US have risen sixfold, partly thanks to a tariff-free scheme known as the African Growth Opportunity Act, or AGOA. This has created thousands of jobs over the years that are now at risk.
If you think of the direct jobs, total AGOA, it's about 86,000 people are employed through AGOA and about 125,000 people in the value chain. So it is big. But if you look at the auto industry, as I mentioned, the third biggest, so it's going to have a huge knock-on effect on the country if we were not able to renew AGOA, because it makes our vehicles more affordable to the consumers in the United States.
About 6% of South Africa's agricultural exports were sent to the American market last year. Nearly 80% of citrus produced by farmers in the Western Cape province is exported to the US. And there are fears that the local wine industry could also be battered since it's the country's fourth largest.
There might even be guys that have to stop farming because not all of us farm with cash. You have to borrow money to make money. So we borrow money from the bank, and if you can't pay back the bank at the end of the day, they're going to take your farm away from you, or you're going to have to stop farming.
The government is putting more effort in opening new markets. It's also negotiating to increase sales to countries where South African companies are already doing business.
We need to be looking at other markets. And by definition of being an African country with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we've got to see how we open up the rest of the continent, because we've got a very progressive, a very positive tariff-free opportunity with the rest of the African continent.
South Africa exported goods worth $14.6 billion to the US last year, but this figure could soon fall catastrophically. South Africa's unemployment rate already stands at nearly 33%. The Reserve Bank now estimates that more than 100,000 jobs could be lost to the US tariffs, which analysts fear may triple once those in the value chain get affected. But with the reports that President Ramaphosa's special envoy, Mcebisi Jonasi, has been denied entry into America, the search for new markets has become even more urgent. Thuso Khumalo, TRT World, Johannesburg, South Africa.
ANC, South Africa's gift that keeps on giving. Us global humiliation giving us all the bloody problems that we face in this country. Have gone from giving us kill the boer to economic collapse and tariffs higher than Julius Malema's matric pass. Giving us tariffs higher than Julius Malema's blood pressure at a farm auction.
Tariffs taking effect today. The auto sector accounts for 5.3% of GDP and is the fifth largest export sector in the country, accounting for 18% of the country's total exports. Last year alone, the sector exported 35 billion rands worth of cars to the United States market. The agricultural sector stands to be at an immediate disadvantage as some of its competitors like Peru and Chile are subject to a lower tariff of 10%. According to agricultural economist Wandile Sihlobo, the most exposed agricultural industries include ostrich products, table grapes, citrus, nuts and wines. This tariff comes into effect after these sectors.
Welcome to 10 Minutes with Kuhle, the only show where we light a match under socialist nonsense and watch it burn. Duty-free unless you're exporting from South Africa. So President Donald Trump, also known as the guy who actually does stuff, just slammed a 30% tariff on South Africa's exports. That's right, 30%. Not 5, not 10, not, but 30, That's higher than Eskom's next price hike. If you just don't understand. Why? Because, shocker, the US is tired of Pretoria's incompetence, race-based policies, racist agenda, and anti-West tantrums and supporting Palestine.
Countries want to protect their local industry in relation to imports of that same good into their country. In other words, they want to try and make their own homemade goods as cheap as possible relative to potential imports, so that people will buy the local goods, and so that will generate employment within the country itself.
And this is the crux of what President Donald Trump has indicated he wants to achieve in order to supposedly make America great again. This mechanism will likely have the effect of reducing US demand for certain goods over the long term, while at the same time enabling the US government to make a mint from the tariff charges, which ties in with the administration's push to reduce taxes in its domestic economy, while Trump is also pushing for foreign companies to invest in America instead of their own economies.
President Trump has professed that he is desperate to try and resuscitate American manufacturing industry, and that has been gradually eroded by cheap import, whose impact has been gradually eroded by cheap imports, especially from China over the last few decades. And he's doing that by imposing a surcharge on goods that are imported into the United States.
Meanwhile, through the auspices of the Department of Trade and Industry, the government has been trying to engage with US officials to work on getting a better trade deal than the 30% import duty imposed.
And, well, Trump, he's not taking it. He's not here to play Ubuntu, my brothers and sisters. He is here to protect American jobs, while Ramaphosa can't even protect South Africa from load shedding or from Lesotho juveniles preparing for a little war in South Africa. Check out that video that I did. Now, and just so we're clear, South Africa got the worst deal in all of Africa. Zimbabwe got 15%. We doubled Zimbabwe, and there's a possibility of an extra 10%. Just understand it. Zimbabwe got 15%. And then our people inside South Africa, otherwise known as Lesotho or the Basotho, the ones that are also preparing to have a military takeover of South Africa, got 15%, Tunisia 25%, Kenya and Ethiopia a tiny 10%, but us, the economic powerhouse of potholes, cater deployment, and B fraud, kill the poor, one bullet, one settler rubbish, got 30%. Guess what that means? Our farmers, wine exports, and car manufacturers, all the hard-working South Africans still trying to keep this sinking ship afloat, are now being punished. But not by ANC. No, by the ANC, who spent decades begging for respect while disrespecting property rights, the Constitution, the private sector, and white South Africans. The ANC need to understand the title of South Africa being the land of Mandela has long passed. The world no longer sees us as that. The world sees us for the crooks that we are. Ramaphosa tried to negotiate. Apparently, he even offered to buy US gas and invest billions into American industries, but Trump ghosted him harder than the South African government ghosted white squatter caps. In return, nothing, not a zilch, except tariffs. Because here's a lesson. When you trash Western allies, host Iranian officials, i.e. Action SA, and cuddle up to Putin while seizing farms, you lose the benefits of global trade. That's how the game works. Shocking, I know. Meanwhile, the ANC's big plan to fix this mess. Wait for it. Support desk. Yes, because nothing screams economic salvation like a new WhatsApp line and a ministerial presser. The DA called it laughable, in which I do agree. And honestly, that's generous. But I'd go with comical tragedy. Let's be blunt. 100,000 jobs are on the line. Farmers, automakers, engineers, steel makers, winemakers, they're being punished for ANC's ideology. Not for crime, not for corruption, not for failure, just for existing under a government that thinks nationalizing everything will magically fix potholes, or fix decades of malpractice. Now, and what does Trump say? I've heard a lot of problems with South Africa. You and everyone else, Donald, I'll be honest with you, but only you had the guts to do something about it. No G20 summit, no photo ops, no fake diplomacy, just pure capitalist retaliation. And we love it. This is what happens when the ANC turns trade into a political landmine. The rest of the world starts walking around us and eventually walking over us. So here we are, global outcast, economic punching bag, and proudly flying the flag of incompetence. If only ANC hated tariffs as much as they hate merit, maybe we'd be fine. But hey, keep voting for the same kleptocrats and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. Or maybe just the ANC's manifesto. This has been 10 Minutes with Kuhle. Please don't forget to sign up for membership. It's as cheap as 20 Rand. It helps in keeping our channel afloat, as well as you can buy me a coffee by sending me a super chat in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe before YouTube slaps me with a 30% tax for speaking the truth. Till next time, this has been 10 Minutes with Kuhle. Shabbat Shalom.